morning, guys. It's so good to see you. I'm so glad you're tuning back in again for another Read Aloud. It's so sad to now know that I will not be able to give you guys hugs or, see you in class again, just because from now on we're doing digital learning through the end of the year. So I hope that you guys are going to continue to log into Zoom meetings, that you're going to continue to watch Read Alouds. Of course, you're reading at home, of course. But I just miss all of you so much and just want to tell you all that I'm so proud of you, and I wish I could give you guys all hugs. So make sure you come on to those Zoom meetings because I love seeing your faces and love to hear how you're doing. But alrighty, now I know that a lot of us probably the last time we watched a video was before spring break for Harry Potter, so let me just quickly remind you. We're on still the chapter. It's called the Death Day Party. In this chapter, Harry Potter and his friends go to Nearly Headless Nick's birthday party. And once they are there, him and Hermione and Ron hear that noise again and run out into the hall. And what Harry is hearing is some sort of voice kind of saying scary stuff. So I'm going to keep reading from the beginning. This is when they're running out into the hall trying to get away, and let's see what happens. "This way," he shouted as he began to run up the stairs into the entrance hall. It was no good hoping to hear anything. The babble of talk from the Halloween feast was echoing out of the great hall. Harry sprinted up the marble staircase to the first floor, Ron and Hermione clattering behind him. "Harry, what were—" "Shh!" Harry strained his ears. Distantly from the floor above and growing fainter still, he heard the voice. "I smell blood! I smell blood!" His stomach lurched. "It's going to kill someone," he shouted. And ignoring Ron and Hermione's bewildered faces, he ran up the next flight of steps 3 at a time, trying to listen over his own pounding footsteps. Harry hurtled around the whole of the second floor, Ron and Hermione panting behind him, not stopping until they turned the corner into the last deserted passage. "Harry, what's all this about?" said Ron, wiping sweat off his face. "I can't hear anything." But Hermione gave a sudden gasp, pointing down the corridor. "Look!" Something was shining on the wall ahead. They approached slowly, squinting through the darkness. Foot-high words had been daubed onto the wall between 2 windows, simmering in the light cast by the flaming torches. And this is what the word said. "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware." "What's that thing hanging underneath it?" said Ron, a slight quiver in his voice. As they edged near, Harry almost slipped. There was a large puddle of water on the floor. Ron and Hermione grabbed him and they inched toward the message, eyes fixed on a dark shadow beneath it. All 3 of them realized what it was at once and leapt backward with a splash. Mrs. Norris, the caretaker's cat, was hanging by her tail from the torch bracket. She was stiff as a board, her eyes wide and staring. For a few seconds they didn't move. Then Ron said, "Let's get out of here." "Shouldn't we try and help?" Harry began awkwardly. "Trust me," said Ron, "we don't want to be found here." But it was too late. A rumble as though of distant thunder told them that the feast had just ended. From either end of the corridor where they stood came the sound of hundreds of feet climbing up the stairs and the loud, happy talk of well-fed people. Next moment, students were crashing into the passage from both ends. The chatter, the bustle, the noise died suddenly as the people in front spotted the hanging cat. Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood alone in the middle of the corridor as silence fell among the mass of students pressed forward to see the grisly sight. Then someone shouted through the quiet, "Enemies of the air, beware! You'll be next, mudbloods!" It was Draco Malfoy. He had pushed to the front of the crowd, his cold eyes alive, his usually bloodless face flushed as he grinned at the sight of the hanging, immobile cat. Okay, so that's the end of that chapter. I'll read a little bit more of chapter 9, so what we see is giant words written on the wall. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. And remember, the title of our book is The Chamber of Secrets. So obviously that's going to be something super important. And then there was Mrs. Norris, who is Filch's cat, is hanging. And we don't know if it's dead or what's happening. So I'm going to start with chapter 9. It's called The Writing on the Wall. You'll see this little picture right here. And some of you might know who that is, but this chapter will tell us a little more. So I'm going to read a little bit of this one, and then I'll probably stop about halfway. "What's going on here? What's going on?" Attracted, no doubt, by Malfoy's shout, Argus Filch came shouldering his way through the crowd. Then he saw Mrs. Norris and fell back, clutching his face in horror. "My cat! My cat! What happened to Mrs. Norris?" he shrieked. And his eyes, popping, fell onto Harry. "You!" he screeched. "You've murdered my cat! You've killed her! I'll kill you! Argus!" Dumbledore had arrived on the scene, followed by a number of other teachers. In seconds, he had swept past Harry, Ron, and Hermione and detached Mrs. Norris from the torch bracket. Come with me, Argus, he told Filch. You too, Mr. Potter, Mr. Weasley, and Miss Granger. Lockhart stepped forward eagerly. My office is nearest, Headmaster, just upstairs. Please feel free. Thank you, Gilderoy, said Dumbledore. The silent crowd parted to let them pass. Lockhart, looking excited and important, hurried after Dumbledore. So did Professor McGonagall and Snape. As they entered Lockhart's darkened office, there was a flurry of movement across the walls. Harry saw several of Lockhart's in the pictures dodging out of sight, their hair in rollers. The real Lockhart lit the candles on his desk and stood back. Dumbledore laid Mrs. Norris on the polished surface and began to examine her. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged tense looks and sank back into the chairs outside of the pool of candlelight, watching. The tip of Dumbledore's long, crooked nose was barely an inch from Mrs. Norris's fur. He was looking at her closely through his half-moon spectacles, his long fingers gently prodding and poking. Professor McGonagall also bent close, almost as close. Her eyes narrowed. Snape loomed behind them, half in shadow, wearing a most particular expression. It was as though he was trying hard not to smile, and Lockhart was hovering around them, making suggestions. It was definitely a curse that killed her. Probably the transformation torture. I've seen it used many times. So unlucky I wasn't there. I know the very counter curse that would have saved her. Lockhart's comments were punctured by Filch's dry, rackling sobs. He was slumped in a chair by the desk, unable to look at Miss Norris. His face were in his hands. Much as he detested Filch, Harry couldn't help but feeling a bit sorry for him, though not nearly as sorry as he felt for himself. If Dumbledore believed Filch, he would be expelled for sure. Dumbledore was now muttering strange words under his breath and tapping Mrs. Norris with his wand, but nothing happened. She continued to look as though she'd recently been stuffed. I remember something very similar happening in my Outgoda, said Lockhart. A series of attacks, the full stories in my autobiography. I was able to provide the townsfolk with various amulets which cleared the matter up at once. The photographs of Lockhart on the wall were all nodding in agreement as he talked. One of them had forgotten to remove his hairnet. At last, Dumbledore straightened up. She's not dead, Argus, he said softly. Lockhart stopped abruptly in the middle of counting the number of murders he had prevented. Not dead, choked Filch, looking through his fingers at Miss Norris. But why? She's all stiff and frozen. She has been petrified, said Dumbledore. Ah, I thought so, said Lockhart. But how I cannot say. Ask him, shrieked Filch, turning his blotched and tear-stained face to Harry. No second year could have done this, said Dumbledore firmly. It would take dark magic of the most advanced. He did it, Filch spat, his pouchy face purpling. You saw what he wrote on the wall. He found, in my office. He knows what I'm a. Filch's face was worked horribly. He knows I'm a squib, he finished. I never touched Mrs. Morris, Harry said loudly, uncomfortably aware of everyone looking at him, including all the Lockharts on the walls. And I don't even know what a squib is. Rubbish, snarled Filch. He saw my quick-spelled letter. If I might speak, Headmaster, said Snape from the shadows, and Harry's sense of forbidding increased. He was sure nothing Snape had to say was going to do him any good. Potter and his friends may have simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, he said, a slight sneer curling his mouth as though he doubted it. But we do have a set of suspicious circumstances here. Why was he in the upstairs corridor at all? Why wasn't he at the Halloween feast? Harry, Ron, and Hermione all launched into an explanation about the Death Day party. There were hundreds of ghosts! They tell you we were there! But why not just join the feast afterwards, said Snape, his black eyes glittering in the candlelight. Why go up to that corridor? Ron and Hermione looked at Harry. Because, Harry said, his heart thumping very fast. Something told him it would sound very far-fetched if he told them he had been led there by a bodiless voice no one but he could hear. Because we were tired and wanted to go to bed, he said. Without any supper? Said Snape, a triumphant smile flickering across his gaunt face. I didn't think ghosts provided food fit for living people at their parties. We weren't hungry, said Ron loudly as his stomach gave a huge rumble. Snape's nasty smile widened. I suggest, Headmaster, that Potter is not being entirely truthful, he said. It might be a good idea if he were deprived of certain privileges until he is ready to tell us the whole story. I personally feel he should be taken off the Gryffindor Quidditch team until he is ready to be honest. Really, Severus, said Professor McGonagall sharply. I see no reason to stop the boy from playing Quidditch. This cat wasn't hit over the head with a broomstick. There is no evidence at all that Potter has done anything wrong. Dumbledore was giving Harry a searching look. His twinkling light blue gaze made Harry feel as though he were being x-rayed. Innocent until proven guilty, Severus, he said firmly. Snape looked furious. So did Filch. "My cat has been petrified," he shrieked, his eyes popping. "I want to see some punishment." "We will be able to cure her, Argus," said Dumbledore patiently. "Professor Sprout recently managed to procure some mandrakes. As soon as they have reached their full size, I will have a potion made that will revive Mrs. Norris." "I will make it," said Lockhart, blood butted in. "I must have done it 100 times. I could whip up a mandrake restorative draught in my sleep." "Excuse me," said Snape icily, "but I believe I am the potions master at the school." There was a very awkward pause. "You may go," Dumbledore said to Harry, Ron, and Hermione. They went as quickly as they could without actually running. They were up a floor up from Lockhart's office and turned into an empty classroom and closed the door quietly behind them. Harry squinted at his friends' darkened faces. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So we have one of the first incidents of this book happening here. Kind of curious, and I wonder if it was a good idea for Harry not to tell the teachers about the voice he heard. So we will continue reading on. We have a couple pages left of this chapter. Friends, I hope you are enjoying your day. I hope you enjoy these read-alouds. Remember, you can always contact me if you have any questions, if anything's going on. I'm still here for you. I know I'm not able to see you in class, but I miss all of you. I love you all. We're still a 4th grade family. So just be sure to let me know if you need anything. I'll come again on tomorrow and read more Harry Potter, and I will also have another Zoom meeting. So make sure that you are getting on those Zoom meetings, whether or not you need help with math, whether or not you like school. I still want to hear from you. I still want to see you. And I want to hear how you guys are all doing. So miss you all. Have a good rest of your day. Bye, guys.